will denote the number of attracting petals or the number of attracting axes. And the first observation is that the invariant line, which is fixed by z goes to z bar, is always a union of attracting and or repelling axes for f squared. So this is not so, well, it's not difficult to prove, but if you try to do it by looking at the definition of the axes and using the formulas, and you put in Maple and you try to see how to prove it, it becomes a headache. So you need to use a geometric proof to show it. And essentially, what is bizarre is that the invariant axis is a union of repelling attracting axes, but the perpendicular axis, which is also an eigen space for the derivative, so which could be particular, is not necessarily, depends on whether the number of petals is odd or even, but a priori it's not an invariant axis. So this is a picture where you have one attracting petal on the left, one repelling petal on the right, and when you iterate with the map, the orbit gets away, and you see that it's the invariant axis, which is somehow here is the union of the attracting and the repelling axis. If you choose this second example, so all those maps are drawn for z goes to z bar square plus c near the fixed point of the polynomial. Here you have a different behavior. If you are, so the invariant axis here is the union of two repelling directions for h squared. On this side you go away and you escape to infinity. On the other side, the orbit goes away in the repelling direction and can rotate and come back. Here, the perpendicular axis for which the derivative is -1 is a union of the two attracting axes. Another example, which is not drawn for, well, let's see. This is drawn, I think, for z goes to z plus z to the 4 conjugate of z plus z to the 4, so it's not in the family z plus z bar square plus c. So here you have also on the left an attracting direction. So the invariant axis is union of attracting direction and repelling direction. On the left you get attracted, on the right you get repelled, and you can go along the union of two attracting directions, which are exchanged by the derivative z goes to z bar. So this is the local picture you get. And so you can ask, so this is the local picture for an arbitrary job. And then you can ask for the particular family I will be looking at, z goes to z bar square plus c. Can you have all possibilities? Can everything occur? So the first thing is, if you want to have a richer study than just at the fixed point, you will look at periodic points. And if you want that the map, the linear, the derivative is orientation reversing, then the period has to be odd. If you take an even period or even period, then the orientation is not reversed. So you take a periodic point with odd period, p, and then you ask what is the possibility for the number of attracting axes. And just because the polynomial PC of z bar square plus c, the second iterate is a holomorphic polynomial with two critical values, the possibilities are only one or two attracting directions. Each attracting direction will have to attract a critical orbit of the second iterate. You have two critical values, and one at infinity, but two in the complex plane. So you can only have one or two attracting directions. In the case you have only one, then necessarily the attracting and repelling direction form the invariant axis. You have nothing else. In the case you have two attracting petals, then a priori you could have the invariant axis delta x could be the union of the two attracting petals or the union of the two repelling petals. And in fact, always the union of the two repelling directions. So here you have a picture for period 3 orbit. This is a Julia set for z bar square plus c, where c has been chosen so that there is a parabolic point of period 3. And this is a zoom near this parabolic point of order 3. And you have, here you can, I stopped drawing the line in between the iterates because you don't see much if you keep the lines. So the orbit goes from one side to the other, from the oscillating between, and the repelling directions form the invariant axis. And in fact, Carsten told me over the weekend how to prove that it's again the fact that the polynomial PC of C has only one critical value that you can use to prove that here necessarily so it's again each attracting direction will attract a critical orbit, and since PC exchanges the two critical orbits, the polynomial has to exchange the two attracting directions. And therefore, the invariant axis is necessarily the union of the repelling axis. Okay, so I think that's all for the local dynamics. And now I will try to study more globally the global picture. So I will stick to the family z bar square plus c, and I will try to show what it looks like, expecting that the computer does not crash. Okay, so this is the bifurcation locus for the family z bar square plus c, and if I move here, what you see on the right is the corresponding Julia set corresponding to the parameter. So if we are in the white region here, the critical orbit escapes to infinity and the Julia set is a contour set. And if you are inside the tricorn, then the Julia set is connected. And in this region here, in this deltoid inside, it crashed. So let's see. The only problem is that I have to adjust for the colors. So maybe I'm putting too many iterates. Less. And for it to be okay, I will get the. And now it's all, of course. I have to make some adjustments. Okay, so inside this kind of deltoid, then there is an attracting fixed point. And if you zoom, and an attracting fixed point, so it has a period 1, which is odd, and it's somewhere, so if I want to see what the dynamics look like, can you see it? Okay, you see this behavior, and you can guess that the invariant direction is somehow this way. And you have here a repelling fixed point in the boundary. And if you move to this region, then you have a cycle of period 2, which is attracting. So for the first return map, it's no longer orientation reversing. And if you zoom here, you will have a small copy of the initial tricorn. Well, not really a copy, but something that looks like. And you can look at the cycle length. Here it's 3, there it's 6. And if you zoom somewhere else, like here we have another copy, which is, so where was it? Period 5, there period 10. And so the goal here is to try to understand this picture a little more. And it has been studied, as I said, a lot already. People know a lot about it. And for example, the parameters for which you have a parabolic cycle of odd period will be dense in the boundary of the trichome. This odd period, with even period it will not be true, but with odd period it's probably true. And the question is to describe this locus. The locus of parameter C for which PC has a parabolic periodic orbit of odd period. And to ask what it looks like. And Jack asked me in a different family, the antipodal family that we are studying with RC and him. So he has been asking what we can say about this locus. And for example, what you observe in the picture is correct. For example, when you take such a parameter, is it always in the boundary of a hyperbolic component? I think people know how can describe the boundary of those hyperbolic components, the boundary of those tricone-like structures. So let's look first if P is equal to 1. This is the only thing I was able to compute effectively. So Jack said something yesterday, which was that when you try to ask the computer to give you a residue for small periods, it gives you an answer, and when you start increasing, then it gets stuck. So here, I ask the computer, can you give me the equation for the parabolic locus of period 1? And so I was not satisfied, so I did it by hand, and you can see that it's in fact the image of the circle of radius 1/2, if I'm correct by the math, C is equal to Z plus Z bar squared. In fact, the reason why I write it this way is that if you ask that you have a fixed point, which for PC with multiplier 1 for the second iterate, then it's necessarily on the circle of radius Z, on the circle of radius 1/2, and then the corresponding parameter C is Z plus Z bar squared. And the image of this circle, Ben Mappel was able to draw it, so it's bentoid, this picture, with 3 smooth arcs and 3 cusps, the ones that you see. But when you start asking, okay, give me the equation for the period 3, then it runs in the run. I don't have the equation for the period 3 cusp. And maybe there is a nice, easy parameterization, I don't know, but I don't have it. Okay, but you can draw the picture. And there's a theorem, a recent theorem by Mukherjee, Nakane and Schleicher, that says that in fact, whenever you look at a hyperbolic component of odd period, meaning that you take a parameter C for which PC has an attracting cycle of odd period, and this is persistent under small perturbation, so you get a hyperbolic component. Such hyperbolic component has been studied by Jack in an article. Is the article revised or under revision, or they are working on it? It's published. It's so there's this article on the hyperbolic component with a description of such hyperbolic components. But it does not tell you exactly what the boundary looks like. And what Mukherjee, Nakane and Schleicher tell you is that in this family, Z bar square plus C, then the boundary will always be exactly the union of 3 curves, 3 arcs, 3 parabolic arcs, connecting 3 parabolic cusps. So this is the case for period 1. This is the case for period 3, so you have 3 copies, one on the roll line, and the tricone is invariant of the rotation of 1/3 of the term. So you have 3 copies, and each one looks like this one rotating. So it's true for the period 3, you can see it on the picture. You can see on the picture for period 5, the one we looked at previously. And what they say is that it's true in full generality. Whenever you take some period P, hyperbolic component, the boundary is always the union of three arcs connecting three cusps. I found this result recently while preparing my talk, so maybe I will be unfair with them, but I think they are cheating a little. Because remember, this here is a single circle, just one arc. It's not three arcs. It's a unit circle. So one has to understand what you call, what you mean when you say the union of three arcs joining three parabolic cusps. And in fact, if you really want to be more precise, you want to say that it's three smooth arcs joining three cusp points. And what they probably do, I did not have time to read through all of it, is to say that the arcs are analytically parameterized. And the parameterization, saying that the parameterization is regular, is what you need to say that the image is smooth. So this follows from results saying that if you have the Teichmüller space of a rational map defined by Milnor and Sullivan, that this immerses in the space of rational maps. So if you use that, it will give the fact that the parameterization is regular and therefore the image is a smooth arc. And so from their results, you can really, so I don't know whether you said it this way, but you can really say that the arcs are smooth. And then what you want to say is that you could try to describe a little more the cusp points and to say what kind of cusp you can have. So this is what I'm working on with Jack and Arasi. So the first thing is that arcs are smooth. Those arcs are smooth, so we have a different approach. I will have 2 slides with text, lots of text. I'm not sure it's good to read the text. I think it's better just to go to the next slide. So this is just to tell you that I can write a statement. And the next slide is the nicer. So let me explain on this slide. So what the previous text says is that you have a local coordinate function. So I will be talking, so we are doing anti-holomorphic dynamics. Our parameter C is complex, but we should really think of it as 2 real parameters. So whenever we want to find local coordinates, we have to use 2 real functions. And here I'm saying that I have just 1 real function. So when I say coordinate function, I just mean that it's local submersion, that its derivative does not vanish. So you have 1 local coordinate, and let's say it's u, and for u is equal to 0, this describes your arc, so this means the arc is smooth. For u positive, then you can say that, so on the arc itself, the property is that the polynomial has preserved a period p, fixed period point, so that f2p is tangent to the identity, so you have a multiple point. So this is what it says. If u of c is equal to 0, then pc2p has a multiple fixed point close to x. If you move in one direction on one side of this curve, this point splits into a pair of a cycle of period 2, repelling cycle of period 2. So here on the curve, the invariant axis is the union of repelling, attracting axis, the invariant axis by the linear map. When you split, it splits into a pair of conjugate cycle of period 2. And when you split into the other direction, it splits into 2 fixed points, one being attracting, the other being repelling. And what we can say is that whenever we choose within the family z bar square plus c, a parameter c naught, so that pc naught has a parabolic point with odd period p, and only one attracting petal, so this is the description of what happens on the boundaries. If If you have only one attracting petal, then this is the local behavior as you perturb your polynomial. You have a coordinate function defining a curve, and the curve will preserve this multiple fixed point. On one side, it splits into a pair of attracting, repelling fixed points for PCP. And on the other side, it splits into a pair of repelling cycle, which is the cycle of PF2 for PC iterated P times. Okay, so the next slide is to say what happens if we are not on this curve, but we are at a cusp, meaning if we have two attracting petals. And what we can prove is that those cusps are ordinary cusps. So again, the big slide saying that you can find coordinate system, meaning two functions, which define local coordinates, so that the curve where you preserve a multiple fixed point is given by the equation u cubed is equal to v squared. So you really have this picture that you have local coordinates uv, and you can even look at the locus u cubed is equal to v squared, which has a cusp near 0. And it says that on this curve, you will preserve, at this point, you have a periodic point with, for the two pieces straight of the map, you have 3 fixed points at the same place. And when you perturb those three fixed points, they split. Along the curve, they split as a multiple fixed point. On one side of the curve, it tells you on which side u cubed is bigger than v squared. It splits into an attracting fixed point and two repelling fixed points for PC iterated P times. And on the other side, it splits into a repelling fixed point and a pair of conjugate attracting cycle of PF2. So the point is really to say there are local coordinates u and v, so that this boundary curve, this parabolic locus, is locally given by the equation u cubed is equal to v squared. So it's really a cusp. It's not smooth, it's not, the regularity is well understood. Okay? Okay, so I guess the rest of the talk is to try to give you some ideas of how we can prove such a result. And the first thing we have to do is to try to encode. So I really want to think of iterating my polynomial 2p times so that it becomes a holomorphic map. Because I understand better splitting the fixed points of a holomorphic map. And then we'll see how to come back to our family. But first I will try to describe how we encode the splitting of a multiple fixed point. So I assume that I have a Riemann surface, that I have a family of holomorphic maps from this Riemann surface to itself, that for some parameter f lambda naught has a multiple fixed point, and I assume that in generality there are m+1 m attracting petals, m attracting directions. So there are m+1 fixed points located at the same place. And when we perturb our rational map, so this is as Jack explained yesterday, those fixed points, they will split into m+1 nearby fixed points, counting multiplicities. And for some parameters, maybe you will preserve a multiple fixed point. So what Jack did yesterday was a special perturbation. He was looking at the map, adding epsilon. And here we don't exactly know what is the perturbation. It may not be just adding epsilon, so you can preserve some multiple fixed points. So as lambda moves away from lambda naught, the fixed point splits, and just for convenience, I note them as x1 of lambda, xn+1 of lambda, but I should not, because those are not holomorphic functions of lambda, just because it's easier to write things afterwards. So, but you should really think that those are not holomorphic functions of lambda. And you want to understand what is how does the splitting behave. how can you, if you want to work, if you want to find local coordinates, you have to encode the splitting of the fixed points. So the idea is to, since those do not depend holomorphically on lambda, the idea is to look at the symmetric functions, elementary symmetric functions. So the first thing you can say is that, so if you want to talk about the symmetric functions, you need to work with coordinates. So I will choose, to begin with, a coordinate. And I will choose a coordinate in a particular form for convenience, so that the map is of the form z plus, so saying that there are m attracting directions says that the map begins with z plus something times z to the n plus 1. You can always conjugate so that the map begins with z plus z to the n plus 1, coefficient 1 in front. So this is a choice. And then you can kill, by conjugate c, all the terms up to the 2n plus 1 term. So I choose such a coordinate. So the map begins at z plus zn plus 1 plus big O of z to the 2n plus 1. Okay, and I call that local preferred coordinates. So now that I have a coordinate, I can look at the fixed point in this coordinate, and I can look at the barycenter. Once I have an affine coordinate, I can talk about the barycenter of the fixed point, and this barycenter, in fact, moves holomorphically. So it's denoted by beta of lambda. Of course, it depends, the definition of the barycenter depends on the choice of coordinate. But it moves holomorphically. And the next thing you can look at is the symmetric function of the differences of the fixed point with the barycenter. And those symmetric functions, so the first one, the sum is not interesting because it's 0, because precisely you look at the difference with the barycenter. So the interesting ones are the double product, the triple product, and so on, which we denote sigma 2, sigma 3, up to sigma n plus 1. And we'll say that the splitting of the fixed point is generic within the family f lambda if we can locally parameterize, if we can use those symmetric functions as local coordinates. So in other words, if the map lambda goes to sigma 2 up to sigma n plus 1 is a local submersion. So what it means, if it's a local submersion, it means you can use them as local coordinates. Maybe you have to complete the system into a system of coordinates, but you can use them as local coordinates. And what is interesting in our setting is that if we have two attracting petals, we remember that our goal is to show that when we have two attracting petals, then the boundary of the hyperbolic component looks like an ordinary cusp. And what we just say, what we prove in fact, is that when we have two attracting petals, the family we are looking at, the tricon family, is generic, which means that we can use sigma 2 and sigma 3 as local coordinates. We can use the double product and the triple product as local coordinates. And when we start asking what is the curve for which we have a multiple root, this is a well-known problem. You look at cubic polynomials. Because we looked at the symmetric function with respect to the barycenter, we look at the family of cubic polynomials. We look, in fact, at the roots of the cubic monic-centered polynomials. And you will have multiple roots if and only if, so I have to put it correctly, 4 sigma 2 4 sigma 2 cube. So I'm French, so I'm used to the letter P and Q. So I have to translate from P to sigma 2 and Q to sigma 3. So it's 4p squared minus 27q, 4p cubed minus 27q squared. And there is a minus here because it's a symmetric function and not a coefficient. So I think it's 4 sigma 2 cubed plus 27 sigma 3 squared is equal to 0. This will be the equation of the cusp. So if we can prove that in the tricon family the splitting of the fixed point is generic, then the equation of the cusp becomes exactly 4 sigma 2 cubed plus 27 sigma 3 cubed is equal to squared is equal to 0. So this shows that it's an ordinary cusp. So the problem boils down to proving that the splitting is generic. I'm cheating a little bit because this is because we have to restrict to the slice of with real parameters. So, well, I'm cheating a little, but I don't have time to give all the details. So, okay, so my goal is to, so this is what is written here. Oh, yes, I have to tell you a little, this statement was about holomorphic maps. So I have to play with holomorphic maps rather than anti-holomorphic maps. And I like this idea of Jack that he told me, that instead of thinking of your anti-holomorphic polynomial as a map from the complex plane to itself, you should just think that you take a copy of the complex plane and you take a copy of the complex conjugate complex plane, and that you think of your polynomial z squared plus c going from the first complex plane to the second, and you return with z squared plus c bar. And so you have a Riemann surface, which is the union of those two complex planes. You have a map from the Riemann surface x to itself. This is why x was not called C before. It's really a Riemann surface. It's the union of two complex planes. And you go with one quadratic polynomial, and you come back with a different quadratic polynomial. So you have a period two parameters, C1 and C2. You go with d squared plus C1, you come back with d squared plus C2. And when you want to look at the trichord family, you slice with the surface C1 is equal to C2 bar. So the statement is that the splitting is generic within the two parameter family, complex parameters C1, C2. And then you have a regular complex cusp. This cusp is invariant under the map C1, C2 goes to C2 bar, C1 bar. And so when you slice with the real plane C2 is equal to C1 bar, you keep the picture we are used to with the cusp. Okay, so my dynamical system, the Riemann surface X is the union of those two complex planes. The map is exchanging those two complex planes. And the proposition is that if you are within this family a multiple fixed point, then the splitting of the fixed point is generic within the family. And here you see that for this statement, I don't have to assume that I'm in the real locus. So, and I don't have to assume that the period is odd or even or whatever. I just have a two-parameter family of two complex family of dynamical system, which is a particular one. Whenever for this, I choose a parameter lambda naught so that I have a multiple fixed point, then the splitting is generic. So for example, it means that necessarily you recover that necessarily the multiplicity at the fixed point is 1 or 2, because if you had 3, you could not be generic because you could not have 3 functions which would be give you a local submersion from a space of dimension 2 to a space of dimension 3. So anyway, so the goal is really to show that the splitting of the fixed point is generic within this family, and we have a family f lambda, but because we are looking at a periodic point, the family that we are really looking at is f lambda to the p. So what could happen is that you could expect some miraculous combination of things that prevents, for some parameters, splitting to be generic. And what this proposition says is that this never occurs. For any cusp you will see in the family, it will be a regular cusp. And this is a transversality assertion, in fact. And for proving this, I will use techniques that were explained to me by Adam Epstein using quadratic differentials. But we are precisely at the place where his techniques, you cannot directly apply them because he's working in some deformation space and proving transversality in this deformation space. And essentially, to work, to obtain his result, he needs to mark the fixed points. So you need to be able to follow holomorphically the fixed point, and precisely we are at a place where we cannot follow holomorphically the fixed point. So we had to work more to be able to adapt these arguments to this situation. So proving that the splitting of the fixed point is generic, the definition was that the local coordinates, the elementary functions can give you a local submersion. So by the implicit function theorem, this is just showing that the derivatives of the map are linearly independent. And to keep it simple, I will come back to my family. I will only deal with the case where we have two attracting petals. I won't try to, well, the proof for m is equal to 1 or m is equal to 3 or higher will be the same. So we'll just skip to this setting. We have a parameter with two attracting directions. And we have two elementary symmetry functions, sigma 2 and sigma 3. And we need to show that the derivatives are linearly independent. And to show that they are linearly independent, the first thing we have to do is to compute them. Or not to compute, because if you start trying to do the computation, it's messy. We have to interpret them. We have to understand the derivatives in order to be able to say that they are linearly independent. And the first thing we have to do if we want to understand them is to understand the tangent space to our family. Because the derivative takes a vector in the tangent space and map it to its function. So it maps to a number. It's a form of the tangent space. And we have to understand which form those derivatives are. So the tangent space itself, the way we'll try to encode it is by, you learn in differential geometry that if you want to understand tangent vector, you take a path, gamma sub t, and you look at the derivative of gamma sub t with respect to t, and you take that at t is equal to 0 and it gives you a tangent vector. So we do the same thing, we take a path lambda t, we look at the family f sub lambda t, and we look at the derivative of f lambda t with respect to t, and take this at times t equal to 0, and we call this psi. And the question is, what is this psi? So it's almost a vector field, but in fact it's not a vector field. So we have a family f lambda t of maps, and we want to understand df lambda t over dt at t is equal to 0. So we call this psi, and we want to understand what is psi of z. So we have a point z, and we look at f lambda t of z. So f of z is here. F lambda t of z is moving. It's a curve moving away from f of z. So when we take the derivative with respect to t and at time t equal to 0, we get a vector, which is psi of z. But this vector is not attached at z, it's attached at f of z. So if we want to obtain a vector attached at z, we just come back via the derivative of f. And in that way, we obtain some vector which is attached at z, and I prefer this approach because I think I understand better vector fields than sections of the pullback bundle. So we work with eta, which is in fact it's not well defined everywhere. You get a problem when you are at a critical point because you cannot pull back via the derivative, and in coordinates it just corresponds to dividing by the derivative of the map, so you get a pole, in fact. And the order of the pole in our setting it just will be a simple pole because you have simple critical points. So you get a meromorphic vector field on X defined by this relation. This is just what I drew on the picture. So this is how we understand our perturbation, our tangent vector to our family is by looking at a meromorphic vector field. And if you just look in our particular family, we get a meromorphic vector field of the union of those two complex planes, which will have a simple critical point at the origin. So you have two critical points, one which I can call 0, 1, and the other in C2, which I can call 0 sub 2. So we have a Holomorphic vector field which has a simple pole at those 2 points. And because within our family we work with quadratic polynomial, infinity is always fixed. And moreover, the coefficient in front of this square is 1. And in addition, the next coefficient in front of z is 0. This gives 3 conditions which translate into the fact that our vector field eta that we get has a triple 0 at infinity. So it's just something which in each coordinate is a dz square, a over z1 d over dz plus b over z2 d over dz. You just have the polar part at 0 and code your vector field. Once we have this, we have to pass to an iterate. It's not just the map that we want to perturb, it's the piece iterate of the map that we want to perturb. So we can just do the same thing to define the perturbation of the iterate. And then the question is how does the 2 vector field you obtain, the one for the piece iterate and the one for the map itself, relate? And the relation is very simple. Eta sub p is just eta plus f upon star of eta plus and so on, fp minus 1 upon star of eta. So this is a simple relation. You just pull back the vector field. So this is our tangent space to our family. Whenever we start perturbing our family, we just have a Holomorphic vector field encoding this variation, which is eta plus f upon star of eta plus fp minus 1 upon star of eta, and I will try to compute it just as pole at the preimage of the principal points. They are wherever they are. Okay, so now given this eta, I have to look at the derivatives of the elementary symmetric functions, and I claim that the derivative of the elementary symmetric functions, which are defined by the behavior near the parabolic cycle, can be expressed by looking at the behavior of eta near the parabolic cycle. So you can do computation. So we have our preferred coordinates zeta where we were working. And if we want to look at the derivative of the elementary function sigma 2 or sigma 3, those are just the coefficient of zeta to the 0 or zeta to the 1 of our vector field eta sub p. And because when you write so the idea is not too difficult. Again, so since the elementary functions, so when you look at fp of zeta of fp minus zeta, this vanishes. This is a function that vanishes at the fixed point. So it's a function that you can express in terms of the symmetric function of the zeros of this function. So it's a polynomial times some function. This is the Weierstrass preparation theorem, in fact. So once you have this, you get the derivative with respect to t. Gives you whatever it gives you. It relates the behavior of the sign, the derivative of f lambda p with respect to t on the left to the derivative of the polynomial of the right. So you see the derivative of the elementary functions relating to this variation of f lambda. And then, since f is tangent to order 2, you relate the variation of psi to the variation of eta, of the vector field eta. And you see that the derivatives are interpreted in terms of the coefficients of eta. Okay, so this gives a way of understanding the derivative of the elementary functions. So, once you have done this, the question is, okay, eta, how do I know my vector field eta? Remember, I said I know it because I know it is a simple description. Well, eta itself has a simple description. It's a vector field, it just has poles at the critical points. But then eta sub p, it was already a little more complicated. We were summing preimages. And now we don't look at the critical point, we look near a parabolic cycle. So we have to transfer the knowledge we have at the critical point to a transfer we need at along the cycle. So how can we understand the behavior of eta near the cycle? So essentially you have the critical points and you have the cycle somewhere. You understand eta near the critical points, and you want to have an information about eta near the cycle. So the only reasonable way you can do this transfer is to use the residue theorem, telling you that if you are on the Riemann sphere and you have a globally meromorphic one form, the sum of all residues is equal to 0. So we have to manufacture a global meromorphic one form that will relate the behavior of eta near the origin to the behavior of eta near the periodic cycle. So to do that, I've lost my computer. To do that, the nice setting, the nice language to use is the language of quadratic differentials. So this was introduced in Nikita's talk, I think, and I will not take exactly the same definition, but they are quite equivalent. Quadratic differential is usually defined as a field of quadratic forms. And you know that between quadratic forms and symmetric bilinear forms, they are essentially the same. So I will define it as a field of symmetric bilinear forms. So it's not a vector field, so at each tangent, in each tangent space you have a symmetric bilinear form. So what can you do? When you are given two vector fields, eta and theta, you can look at q of eta, theta, it gives you a function. And you can, so symmetric means that if you look at q of eta theta is equal to q of theta eta. And the fact that it's bilinear means that if you look at q of eta something, this defines a form, one form. So that you denote by q times eta, and the reason is that if you work in coordinates and write q as q of z squared and eta as eta of z over dz, the formula you get for the one form is just q of z times eta of z over dz. So this is just the one form, and once you have this one form, you can talk about the residue. So if you want to extract the coefficients of eta in the theta coordinate, you just have to multiply by a quadratic form, or take the tensor product if you prefer. And once you do this, you can look at the residue, and it will give you the coefficients of eta. If you want the coefficient of eta naught, you multiply by dz squared over z, and you take the residue. If you want eta 1, you multiply by dz squared over z squared, and you take the residue. If you want eta 2, the next coefficient, you multiply by dz squared over z cubed. Okay. So it means that now I can go back to my setting, now that I have the quadratic differential. The first thing is to pass from the knowledge we had for eta p at the parabolic point to something we use along the cycle. So this is not too difficult. Instead of taking, so what we do is to choose a quadratic differential of a certain kind, a quadratic differential whose polar part along the cycle is prescribed. It's of the form of this form. So you have your preferred coordinate, you propagate this preferred local coordinate along the cycle by composing with f. Then you look at d theta over theta to the k to extract the coefficients of the vector field theta. So you know what the polar part is, and you can look at there is a unique meromorphic quadratic differential defined by those conditions. So, which has, I don't have time to go too deep into the detail, but the property is that Q1 will have simple poles along the cycle, Q2 will have double poles along the cycle in order to extract the coefficient, the constant coefficient of eta, or the coefficient eta 1 zeta of eta. So Q2 has a polar part along the cycle with double poles, Q1 has a polar part along the cycle with simple poles. And in fact, those polar parts, more or less by constructions, are invariant. They are invariant if we look f, if we use f to change, to go from one coordinate to the other. This polar part is invariant. And the claim, the proposition without the proof is that instead of just looking at the residue at one point for eta p, you can sum the residue along the cycles for this quadratic differential with invariant polar parts. And you get this formula. Okay. Then the next thing, to go back to the critical point, is to, so it's, I don't know in which order I have to do it, but I will do it in the order of the slides. The next thing is to push forward the quadratic differential. Again, this has been defined by Nikita, so I could go quick on this. Quadratic differential, it's easy to pull them back, and you can push them forward by summing on the inverse branches. And in fact, just because the polar parts of Q1 and Q2 along the cycles are invariant, when you push forward, the polar part cancel along the cycle. So what remains if you just ask, okay, so I get Q1 minus F. So when you look at Q minus F lower star of Q, this the polar part along the cycle was invariant, so this has no poles along the cycle. A quadratic differential on P1 necessarily has at least 4 poles. This is Riemann-Roch. So you can ask, where are the poles of Q1 minus F lower star of Q1? Well, in fact, given the construction, we already know that there is a possibility of a triple pole at infinity. And the only place where you can have, when pushing forward, the only place where you can have a new pole is the critical values. So the poles of your quadratic differentials are necessarily at the critical values. You have two critical values, C1 and C2. And necessarily your two images belong to this vector space with two quadratic differentials with poles at C1 and C2. Okay, I'm almost done, and I'm starting to do the time. So now, using the residue theorem, so when you look at Q times eta, Q is a globally meromorphic quadratic differential, eta is a globally meromorphic vector field. So the sum of Q times eta, of residues of Q times eta on the whole surface X is 0. At infinity, Q has a triple pole, eta has a triple zero, there is no residue at infinity. So the only place where you have residues are along the cycle and at the critical value. So you can transfer the sum of residues along the cycle to the sum of residues of nabla FQ at the critical value. And you get a formula, which is the one which is on the board, but what you should remember is that we just transferred, using the residue theorem, we transferred the knowledge at along the cycle to the knowledge at the critical value. And so the only thing that remains to do, so this is a proof, which is not very long in fact. The only thing we need to say, in fact, remember that our goal was to say that the two derivatives were linearly independent. So the only thing that remains